Welcome back to our 21st episode of the Launch Your Farm Show, where I interview Jason Morris, who runs the Facebook group Real Estate Agents That Really Work. Today, Jason and I discuss how he went from being a young kid with no idea how to succeed in the business and almost failing out, to growing a massive business that he hated. Once he learned to start setting standards in his business, he was able to get back his life and build a thriving business. In this episode, Jason and I talk about why starting small in your farm is the best approach and how to build your business around that. Jason shares how his experience playing rugby helped him become a prospecting machine. We also talk about what Jason did to change his whole business to get his life back and not only thrive, but also get his love and the passion back for the business. We also share a super easy way to prospect and build your farm for very little money and how to do that consistently. And we also talk about how to implement the fundamentals, the boring stuff, to win in any real estate market. Plus, a ton of other insights and ideas that you can use to grow your farm. So enjoy the episode and be sure to check out Jason's special promotion that he is running with RedX. You can find that out at the end of the episode, so be sure to listen for that. Otherwise, like and subscribe and enjoy the episode with Jason. Welcome back to Launch Your Farm. I'm your host, Ryan Smith, and today we've got a great guest. It's Jason Morris. Jason is the founder of Real Estate Agents That Work real estate group. So Jason, really work.
Yes.
So Jason, take a second, introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your business and who you are.
So I've been selling real estate about 18 years in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina area. And the here in a nutshell, thing. I started selling real estate right out of college. I finished college like on a Monday, went through university, and I basically moved to South Carolina like 3 days later. I didn't know anybody, didn't have a sphere of influence. Literally, I was a broke college kid. I worked for the Carolina Opry, which is a big music theater here. This is like a big tourist attraction. And got my real estate license. And I'll tell you what my first thought of the real estate business was. Man, I met a lady while I was in real estate school that worked for an oceanfront developer down here. And she goes, hey, you should move to Myrtle Beach and you should sell oceanfront condos. Mm-hmm. And this is 21, 22-year-old Jason. And based on what she told me, it sounded amazing, right? I was going to move down here. I was going to basically sit in the oceanfront office, hang out, wait for people to come in, and basically, hang out at the beach and walk around a beautiful brand new resort. And then, every time I'd sell one of these things, I'd make $6,000-8,000, and it wouldn't be a big deal to sell two or three a month, right?
Yeah.
And it sounded amazing, right? Well, it turns out that's not how it was. So working for an oceanfront developer, you were selling a building pre-construction that didn't exist, right? Yep. So you were selling an idea basically off a piece of paper, and hoping that people bought into this dream that was going to be at least 18 to 24 months away. And then hopefully you could hang on long enough or get some sort of draw that you wouldn't need a check for 18 months until that closed. She left those parts out,
Yeah.
And so anyway, I went to work for a general brokerage office. And, like a lot of people did, I didn't have any money, man. I was working with an agent, and this guy was selling about $4 or $5 million a year, which at the time was 2003, 2004, that was a big agent. Yep. There wasn't $100 million teams back then, Anyway, so this guy done a lot of mail outs. Well, being the person that I was and the broke college kid, doing $10, $20 worth of mail outs a week was a big deal for me. And this guy was spending like $2,000-3,000 a month, and had a couple people sponsoring stuff, and had been in the business 20 years and all this stuff. Well, that really wasn't an option for me. Long story short, I switched offices, went to a bigger office. I'm sitting in the office meeting one day. There's about 40 agents there, and the guy that was the team leader, he'd go around the office, and basically you get to talk about what you had going on, a new listing coming up or something. And most agents, they were lucky if they had like one new listing to talk about. There's a little guy in the back, this little Italian guy that was from up north, had a real northern accent. He's from Vermont. And he is literally just rattling off one listing after another. Then he's interrupting the next person because he forgot one, and I'm like, damn, what's this guy doing? Right.
Yeah.
Because here I was struggling. Like I was struggling to pay my $100 office fee a month. Right.
Yeah.
And so I follow him out in the hall after the meeting, and I'm going, hey man, how much mail are you doing a week? And he looks at me and he goes, I don't do any mail. I just call sellers and say, hey, you want to sell your house? And I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, I just call people that want to sell their house. And I'm like, and he goes, then I just call neighborhoods. And I'm going, well, like, I mean, that's it, right? And I mean, so basically, he lets me borrow Mike Ferry Superstar Retreat
Yeah.
recordings that he had, and and it was on VHS tape. That's how long ago that was, and it was like, I was like 12 hours.
For
I
the new
pretty much
agents who
want.
are younger and don't know, it's those big square things you stick into a box and watch videos on.
Yeah, so I watched this thing basically straight through, and at that time, during that time, RedX didn't exist, right? There wasn't a service for expires.
Yep.
So basically, I had no fear at all of the phones. I played rugby in college. I've been in a real aggressive atmosphere and stuff, and nobody was going to come beat me up. I already knew that. If they did beat me up, it wasn't like I got beat up before I played rugby. They wasn't going to beat me up that bad. And so I had no fear, man, but I would spend 3-4 hours a night looking up numbers to be able to make an hour's worth of calls the next morning.
Wow.
And long story short, I'd have this brutal prospecting schedule where I'd prospect 4 or 5 hours a day. Sometimes I wouldn't even take a bathroom break. I mean, just brutal, right? And 2006 comes along. My market's going crazy. 05, 06, it goes crazy. I make a ton of money, more money than a 25-year-old probably should ever make. And 2007 comes along and everything just stops.
Yeah.
Right. So I switch up things and I start a property management company. We had all this pre-construction to sell, and I stayed on the phones. By that time, RedX had actually come out, and I think I was like one of the first 300 subscribers. Like, I'm probably like really dating myself. But I do a lot of trading for them, and they told me that one day, and I'm sitting there going, really? You guys, I was like one of the first 300 subscribers. Like, are you kidding? So anyway, they took it. So all of a sudden the market fell off and you couldn't list a property. And I believe some of this is coming again, Ryan. I think with the market and the changes and things we're seeing in the economy and just, I don't have a crystal ball, but I think we're going to see some crazy stuff in 2021. But so what I did was I started calling homeowners, same as I was doing. And I was going, hey, Mr. Seller, Jason Morris here. Hey, I know we can't sell your house because you paid $200,000 for it and it's worth 110, but would you like to rent it? So long story short, I went from like 0 properties to had probably 150 properties in 12 months. I was getting so many keys mailed to me in the mailbox. I couldn't keep up with whose key was which, which was a good feeling.
Yeah.
And so I grew a big property management company. Next thing I knew, I was getting a lot of leads. I started building websites. I started building a team. Won a bunch of awards at the franchise I was in for production and stuff. And like a lot of agents, I was working 7 hours a day, as close to 24 hours as possible. I was super burnt out. Pretty sure I had a stomach ulcer. Just hated life. Every day it was like that movie, what is it, Office Space, where they talk about how like every day is a little bit worse than yesterday was. I know today isn't the worst day of my life because tomorrow is going to be worse than this. That's how I felt, But we were signing, a few hundred leases a year and doing a couple hundred sales a year, and probably about 400 transactions between leases and sales a year. So that went on for 3 years. Finally, I was just at the point where like, hey, I just couldn't do it anymore. I ended up getting divorced, disbanding the team, disbanding the property management company. And one of the things I decided, I was actually going to quit real estate. I was going to quit real estate and just go find something else to do. I was over it. I hated it. I hated talking about it. I just hated the whole thing.
Yeah.
Then, so I spent about 3 months just kind of hanging out. I did a little business that fell in my lap, and I kind of had this realization come to me that you know what, I'd created this crazy job for myself. It wasn't the real estate business that I didn't like. It was the business that I'd created for myself.
Yep.
So what I decided to do was I set standards for myself and said, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I want my days to look. And I went out there as a single agent with a buyer's agent. And I said, hey, I don't want to work with a buyer unless they're a cash buyer that knows what they want, or they're a friend or family member, right? And everybody else got referred. All of a sudden, man, I went from these crazy, crazy days to my schedule was like I'd start at 8 a.m. It sometimes, depending on how I done my schedule and set my appointments and stuff, lots of days I'd be finished by like 3. right?
Yep.
So, and that was my schedule for a real long time. Like rarely did I work past 5. I'll tell you what, my girlfriend, basically she met me during that time. And one of the things she said was, she goes like, how do you have I was carrying about 45 listings. And she goes, how do you have all these listings? But you like never work. But the key is consistency. The key is having a schedule, being consistent. It's like going to the gym, right?
Yeah.
If you go to the gym every day and get on the treadmill, sooner or later, you're going to get really good at getting on the treadmill, and you're going to see results, and those results are going to continue and go on and on. And so that's what I was experiencing. So now I train agents how to create a business that works for themselves and works for their life, and just works for what helps them basically reach their goals, right? A lot of us forget that we are in a great business, and maybe you don't like the real estate business, but you can make a lot of money doing it. And you know what? If you want to feed the homeless, if you want to do something great, you know what? It's way easier to do, and you can help a lot more when you have a lot of money. And so what I started looking at was, how could we use the real estate business to reach my goals, right?
Yep.
How could I become financially independent? And I started looking at, how could I use my real estate sales to finance a rental portfolio so that I could lay on the couch and people would mail me checks. That's the idea. It doesn't work out that way, it seems like, but man, that's my whole career, basically, about as quick as we can get through it,
Yeah, and we've talked a number of times about that, about the hard work, but it's smart work. Like, it's not just putting in the hours and burning yourself out, because there's a lot of agents who do that, and they'll do stuff that they seem busy and they seem like it's doing awesome, and then, like you said, they're burning out. They don't even want to do it anymore. It's figuring out that balance of hard work and smart work. And in my opinion, that's why I like farming, because it helps you get to that, where you're able to be intentional with what you're doing. You can be purposeful with it. You can work hard at it and then grow something that's awesome. So
without a doubt,
for you, obviously the calling is a huge part of it. And that's kind of what I want to talk about, and talk about that geared towards farming. What's it been like for you, or what have you seen agents do when it comes to calling?
Man, I got this. Well, it's not really an idea, because I've seen it happen, and I've worked on it myself, and I've actually done it. So, a lot of agents, one of the things they don't get is they think they have to do everything, right? They think they got to do everything. They think they got to do Zillow. They think they got to do the latest, greatest, magical silver bullet and all this stuff. And they really don't, right? They could literally take a small area, and they could do a combination. They could have an integrated marketing strategy, right?
Yep.
Where they're farming, just like what you teach, where they're doing mail outs, where they're doing some Facebook ads. Maybe they got a little website dedicated to that specific area. And then they can take and use a product like RedX's GeoLead, use $1, and they could literally dominate, and they could reach their goals. And you know what? They could do it part-time. Exactly. I'll tell you this. So I live in an area that's probably average price homes are probably closer to $500,000. And you know what? I see a lot of agents, and I kick myself when I'm not doing it, because I live right there in the neighborhood, And you know what? There's one agent that actually lives in my neighborhood, man, and she's going around, she's taking pictures of new construction. She's posting them on Facebook. She's taking pictures of the houses getting built. She's posting them on Facebook. And you know what, man? She has become the knowledge source for that area that we live in, right? And you know what? A lot of agents out there, Ryan, and you probably know this, dude, if they could do one deal a month consistently at the average price point in their market, they would probably make the living that they want to make.
Yep, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
I think too many of these calls and too many of these podcasts, people like to talk about how to make $1 million a year. but the crazy thing is, you know what? $1 million is hard to make in a year, especially when you've never made $1 million a year.
Yeah.
It's hard to wrap your head around that whole concept. But, for a lot of you guys listening to this, that you have a goal that's, hey, you want to make a really great living. You want to spend time with your kids. You want to work part-time. Maybe you're a stay-at-home mom, stay-at-home dad, that, you're responsible for, the duties around the house, making sure the kids get from point A to point B, right? And, you only have 20 hours a week.
Yeah.
You could take a, what would you say the average turnover rate is for
So I did the math in Canada, across
Yeah,
all of Canada, because where I'm in the country I'm in,
of course.
is just over 4%. It was like 4.1%. But if you look into most suburban areas, if you look into like the core areas, it's usually about 5 to 6% turnover rate.
Yeah. So if you got an area that's doing, just say 5%,
Yeah.
and your farm is 100 houses, that means 5 houses are going to sell in that area in the next 12 months, correct?
Yep.
So let's say you picked an area, neighborhoods, like literally your neighborhood you can live in, plus some surrounding stuff, and you got enough so that you got, I don't know, how many homes? If you did,
I use 1,000 as an easy number, and I use 5% turnover rate. So there's 50 home sales.
Yep. So there's going to be 50 home sales there, and that's not counting buyers.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not counting buyers. That's going to be 50 homes that sell in the community. That's not counting buyers. So there's roughly going to be 100 sides to sell within those 1,000 homes, more than likely, or roughly. Dude, what if you could get 12 of those a year and work part-time?
Exactly.
I mean, how much would that? Let's talk about time commitment for that. So 1,000 homes to farm that. How much monetary commitment do you think you would need?
I always explain when I'm going through to people, it depends on your strategies, but I look at the max I would spend, and I look at what I would pay for a referral. So I'd pay 25% for a referral. Then I say, okay, max I'd spend would be 25%, and then work my way backwards. But if you spend 10% to get that, then I think it's always a fair price or a fair number to do that. So if it's $10,000 in commission, if you spend $1,000 per deal to get that, it'd be $12,000, and then 120. So you're looking at just over 100K to do that.
How about if we be cheap? How about if we be cheap and talk about this real quick? And because sometimes this is what I talk about. You know what? They're newer agents. They don't have a lot of money. They don't have a budget. So you got 1,000 homes. If you do a mail out and you get really cheap in the United States, it's going to cost you, doesn't matter how you cut it, by the time you buy an envelope, by the time you buy a stamp, by the time you print it, it's going to cost you $1 a mailer. So it's going to cost you $1,000 to do a mailer.
Yep.
Okay. If you go out here and you get 1,000 door hangers printed, you can get them done. You can get them done online from you look on eBay. eBay has some great printers. You probably get 1,000 of them done for like $150, maybe cheaper. Yep. And have your stuff on the front and back. You just run around sticking them on the doors, right? Yep. It takes you a little bit more time, but let's say you done that and you spent $200 a month on flyers.
Yep.
You religiously went out there hanging door flyers, right? And then you spent another $100 a month on Facebook. Okay. Then you spent $50 a month on GeoLeads. So you're taking and you're putting out the flyers once a month. You're going out there doing the Facebook ads, so hopefully they're steady seeing you. If you're doing GeoLeads plus, you get email addresses, so maybe you can pull some emails out of there. You can use those to help you target your Facebook ads and get a little more zoned in on things. You can do, then you could take and literally call the neighborhood, 1,000 dials just on your cell phone. Just say if you're dialing 30 numbers an hour, it's going to take you 33 hours, right? You break that up, so you're calling every house. You're talking about 7-8 hours a week, right?
Yeah.
7-8 hours a week. You're calling the whole neighborhood. Probably another 10 hours a month. You're putting out all the door hangers. So then you got, we're only talking about like working 10 to 12 hours a week.
Yeah, exactly.
And that probably includes a listing appointment here and there, right? And we're talking about monetary spend of $350.
Yeah.
And we're not even shopping around for door hangers.
Exactly.
We're not shopping around for door hangers. We're doing $100 a month on Facebook, and you can always scale that up.
Yeah.
So $350 a month, if you can get one deal a month, right? We're not talking about setting the world on fire. We're talking about 8% market share.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? We're not talking about setting the world on fire. We're not talking about killing yourself. We're not talking about any of that stuff. I mean, why aren't more agents doing this, do you think?
I think part of it is the time commitment, and it's the financial commitment, and they give up too soon. And I've seen, again, teaching farming for as long as I have, that you see agents get in there and they're 3 months in and they give up. They don't see the deal right away, and then they stop doing it, or they get drawn into something that's sexier or something that seems more fun and exciting to them, and they don't like that consistency going over and over again. And it blows my mind. I use the example of my friend Adam all the time. he had a farm and he set out a budget and he said he's going to spend, if I have $100 a month, if I could spend that, what could I do with that $100 and what size area would I have to pick that I could do $100 a month? And if I didn't get any deals in the next year, I'd be okay losing that money. And he picked an area of 250 homes. And there was, I think it was 11 sales in the neighborhood that happened in that year. He got 8 or 9 out of the 11 sales. And he just blitzed them every single month. Plus he did flyers around his listings. He did flyers around his open houses, and it didn't cost him much. He printed stuff off at the office, and he got 8 or 9 deals out of 11 deals, and from 250 homes. And it was just,
that's crushing it.
Yeah, it was awesome. And
that's crushing it.
Yeah,
without a doubt. It's really interesting. I see a lot of agents. I see it in my coaching. They'll make calls as soon as they start getting some results on it and stuff. They get a little busy. They get some deals under their belt. They quit doing what's working.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they jump on something else.
Yeah.
And they never spend long enough to be successful. I had one guy, he was a part-time guy. He was a police officer. Stars just aligned for the guy. He'd been making calls and he'd been kind of struggling and stuff. Stars kind of aligned for the guy. He ends up closing 9 deals in the month of January.
Wow.
And he done this all for making calls, right?
Yeah.
He making calls, taking listings. Then all of a sudden he has those nine calls going on, or 9 deals going on, and he gets completely sidetracked, and he's got some money in his pocket now, and then he starts going and doing some other stuff that he thinks is going to be easier and simpler, and next thing you know, he's basically I think he's out of the business now.
Yeah.
And if he would have just stayed consistent, I think that's the hard thing for people, is they don't realize that this business is about the fundamentals.
Yeah, 100%.
It's the fundamentals, and that's the boring stuff. When you look at football teams, right? Lou Holtz talks about the fundamentals in one of his books, and talks about the fundamentals of the boring things. It's the passing, the running, the blocking and stuff. It's not the fancy plays. It's not the fancy stuff. It's just the fundamentals, the basics,
Exactly.
right? And if you look at football teams, more than likely the team that's the best at the fundamentals is going to be the team that wins games.
Yeah.
Right? The team that goes out there and they try to do these funky plays and these fancy plays, and they got, players that, that are really just looking for the opportunity for themselves. Yeah. They're probably the team that's going to lose.
Yeah.
It's not going to be, it's not going to be one of the teams that is going to make it to the Super Bowl more than likely. And for agents, the agent that's out there consistently making calls, consistently touching their client base, consistently working that database, which is their farm.
Yep.
That's the agent that's going to make a lot of money. That's the agent that's going to win. That's probably the agent that's going to hit their goals with no problems. And the thing is, that stuff is boring.
Exactly.
That stuff is boring.
Yeah.
I see it with agents in my coaching stuff. They start doing great and they do some sales and get some money in their pocket, and then they go, hey, I'm going to do this and this. And then they spend all their money on stuff that doesn't make sense. Exactly. And, Ryan, I'll tell you, and I'm guilty of this too, man. I'm guilty of this too. I think a couple of years ago in my area, it was drones. People would buy $3,000 drones, right? And they buy $2,000-$3,000 drones, and I've yet to hear anybody say like, man, I really like the house at 123 Main Street. I was going to make an offer, but you didn't have any pictures of the roof.
Exactly. Yeah.
Dude, when I first started, it was the talking house. Do you remember that?
Yep. Yeah.
Dude, so what I did, man, was I went to a real estate thing, and I got sold on this talking house, and I bought 5 of them. Right.
I had
and the
3.
problem, you had 3 of them.
Yeah.
Well, the problem was I was a broke college kid, right? I'd put these on my credit card. Yeah. And one thing I did was every listing appointment after that, I sold this talking house hard. Yeah. Now, the thing was, nobody really knew about the talking houses except for me and you, right?
Yeah.
The only people who knew about them were in the real estate industry. The general public wasn't asking us for talking house. The general public is not asking us for drone footage most of the time. They're not asking us for Matterport. They're not asking for us a lot of the things that agents are spending a ton of money on. Yeah. But agents are going out there and they're volunteering. They're selling this stuff, right? But for me, I ended up in a position where, hey, I only had 5 talking houses. I could only take 5 listings, right? Because I didn't really have the money to go buy a 6th one or a 7th one because my credit card was maxed out.
Yeah.
And it was just a shiny silver bullet that honestly I never sold a house from. It's like flyer boxes.
Yep.
I think agents make things too complicated. My flyer box story is, dude, I had like 50 listings. I go to this real estate conferences in Charlotte. This dude talks about this flyer box, holds it up, tells us, gives us testimonials. Another agent in the crowd basically stands up and tells us how many deals they've done a year with these stupid flyer boxes. And so I'm like, I gotta have flyer boxes for all of mine. So I spent like $1,000 right there and buy like 50 flyer boxes. I basically get home and I tell my assistant how great this is gonna be, right?
Yeah.
And so for like the next 2 weeks, literally we are riding around with her in the car with me, putting out flyer boxes on every listing I had, filling it full of flyers. And the only thing this done for me was it created another job.
Yeah, exactly.
It created another job. So one day a week, one of us, we sold everybody on these damn flyer boxes too, right? These flyer boxes, this is going to sell your house. This is going to
Yeah.
sell, right? So this is like 2014, probably 13, 14. So what it did was one day a week, basically, one of us would have to drive around putting flyers in boxes, because if that flyer box went empty, man, the seller would be all over us going,
Yeah.
hey, we ain't getting showings at my house because we don't have any flyers in the box. And little did we know, probably kids were taking them out. They're making paper
Exactly.
airplanes, balling them up, throwing them at each other. Who knows what was going on with them. I can tell you this, we never tracked a sale back to those flyer boxes,
Yeah.
I don't believe. But at the same time, it literally created more work for us.
Yeah.
And if we would have just focused on the fundamentals and we'd have took that day a week and we'd have focused on contacting our database and all that stuff, it would have been so much different.
I talk about all the time with the farming fundamentals is that those aren't going to change when you're doing your farming. The strategies you may use may change, and how you're reaching people may be different, but the fundamentals is you need to stay in touch with people, you need to build value in the community, and you need to be consistent with that. And I always ask people, it's like, well, what's your goal for adding people to your database? And they say, well, I'm just trying to get my message out there. I'm like, no, you need a goal to add people to your database. You need to get people to put their hands up so that you can communicate with them past just passively sending them out mailers. And so you have to have a plan. And if you don't have that, then you're literally hoping that someone reaches out to you. You're hoping that just if I send enough things that people will want to do business with me. And it's like, to me, one of the fundamentals of farming is I always call it the sub farm is really your farm. The people that you get their information from, the people whose name, address, phone number, and email that you can communicate with past just passively mailing out stuff. That's your real farm. Your real farm is those people. And when you can set up your systems in place so that people are putting their hands up to stay in touch with, or giving you permission to stay in touch with them past just mailers or whatever, that's where the magic starts happening. That's the fundamentals.
Oh, exactly, man. Exactly. One of the things that I've been teaching my group coaching was that when you're building a farm and you're doing exactly like what you're teaching, right, is, a lot of agents forget, they think they got to have all this money to farm. They got to have expensive mailers is typically what I feel like I hear about.
Yep.
And the thing is, like, man, what if you took that 1,000 houses and you started looking for agents in your office, agents wherever, right? And just started begging everybody to let you do an open house at their listing in there. And then you took call the community, you door knock the community, put stuff out, you call the community, invite them to your open house. Then you take and have the open house, right? And then after the open house, you do a follow-up door knocking, and you do a follow-up call, right?
Yeah.
Like, and we're only talking about in the community, right? So we're only talking about 100, 150 homes, just depending on the size of it.
Yep.
I mean, man, you know what? Every time I've done that in my market, and we're not a big open house market, right? But I'd still have 20, 30 people show up.
Wow.
And most of the time it would be like the nosy neighbor that's thinking about selling their house.
Yeah.
And so I mean, lots of times I wouldn't sell that house from that open house, but I'd get a buyer that maybe I could take to another house down the street, or I'd get somebody interested in selling. And I think a lot of agents don't understand there's a lot of ways to farm other than I mean, it's 2020, we have amazing technology. The technology we have today did not exist nowhere even close when I started selling real estate. We had to do everything the hard way.
And I think for a lot of people, that's the misconception, that they think that farming is postcards and door knocking. And that's can be an element of it. And I get that objection all the time when I'm talking to people, and they say, well, I can't farm. I don't want to farm. I don't have the money to do it. I don't want to send out postcards. I'm like, that's one strategy with farming. It's not the only strategy. Farming is just becoming the expert and focusing in an area. And in my boot camp, that's basically what the main premise of it is, to teach people very inexpensive or free ways to do business, and you don't have to have anything. So I'll share an example. One of my students, she took the first lesson, which was, we're borrowing listings from other agents in your farm, and we use those listings to advertise. So we advertise them online. We get permission from them to borrow them and try to generate buyer leads. Well, she did this, and this week she ended up connecting with a lady who runs they're building a retirement home, 250 person retirement home. And she's now meeting with them to discuss being the representative for when they refer them. So when they're moving into the retirement home and they need to sell their house, all coming from borrowing one listing or borrowing listings that she's been posting in these Facebook groups. So it's like, yeah, you don't have to spend a lot of money. And I know when I got started in the business, I thankfully joined an awesome team that really understood things past just the typical way of doing real estate. And I was doing a lot of internet leads, and my first sale was a 12 unit apartment building that came from a classified site. So it's like, you don't know where it's going to come from. So you don't have to spend a lot of money to be doing it.
Yeah, dude, I'll tell you this. I don't want to tell a lot of details because I don't want to jinx myself, but I got a deal going on right now with a guy that, similar thing, man. Met the guy years ago. Like, you don't know where deals are going to come from sometimes, but for whatever reason, I've kept up with him, and I guess you'd call it more of a sphere of influence, but it's, a guy that basically raised his hand, and I got this 18 unit deal going on with him right now.
That's awesome.
That I think it's going to happen. I don't want to jinx myself, but I think it's going to happen, right? I mean, we're at the point that if it doesn't happen, I'll be more surprised than if it don't happen.
Exactly.
If it doesn't happen, I'd be very surprised, right? I mean, we're just at the point that it makes sense. And it actually started before COVID took place.
Wow.
The process of the deal started there, or the negotiation part. And then we've just, here we are. COVID is, I don't want to say it's over, but it definitely is not what it was 8 months ago. Definitely it's different than it was 8 months ago. 8 months ago, everybody was scared to do a deal quite like this one because it's not very conventional. And now everybody's a little more comfortable with it. And hey, you know what? It's created a lot of opportunity.
It's awesome. And I think to your point as well, earlier you mentioned about you didn't just stop doing deals because you got this potential. And I see a lot of agents do that. They start doing stuff, they get a deal coming, they get excited about it, and then this potential for a deal comes together, and then they stop doing what they were doing, they stop doing what worked, and they put all their eggs in that one basket. It's like, no, you got to continue to do what you're doing. It doesn't matter if that deal comes together. I would say once it's in the pipeline, it doesn't matter. Like that's a whole separate side of your business. You just got to keep doing this side of the business, which is generating more of those, and you can't let up on what you were doing.
People don't really understand. A lot of agents don't understand. It needs to be taught at every office that our business is a funnel.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks funnel. Everybody thinks when you mention funnels that they're talking about lead pages or click funnels, right? But that's not the truth. Our business is like a funnel, like one that you'd put oil in your car with, right? Or put oil in whatever with. And once you quit pouring oil in the top, once you quit putting leads in the top, once you quit your farming, once you quit whatever the process is that you're stuffing people in the top, sooner or later that funnel's going to drop.
Yeah.
And so I see a lot of agents, man, they're crushing it. They're out there working their butt off, and they got 3 deals in the pipeline, and all of a sudden they quit working because they think they got to babysit those 3 deals. And just like you said, once the paperwork's signed, in our state, it goes to an attorney. And then really, there's not much for us to do as real estate agents. We're just waiting on inspections. And if you're the listing agent, dude, there's no reason for you to be at the inspection.
Yeah.
Honestly, it just creates liability for you, right? I mean, unless you're going to hold the other end of the tape measure for the appraiser when he's measuring a room, there's no reason for you to be there either, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so I see agents like hand holding these things, and they're filling their day with busy work that isn't filling their funnel. It isn't going out there generating new stuff. And you cannot quit generating new business. You cannot quit reaching out to your farm. You can't quit reaching out to your sphere of influence. If there's one takeaway from this that anybody has, I mean, you cannot quit looking for new business. Once you quit looking for new business, you are going out of business.
Exactly. That's one of my biggest ahas was Fanatical Prospecting. I think it was Jeb Blunt's book. And he talks about the replacement value of when a transaction happens. And if there's 50 people in your pipeline and 5 people actually do something. When one person buys, how many people do you need to replace in their pipeline? And people
Yep.
would normally say one. It's like, no, you need to replace 10 people because it takes 10 people to get that one transaction. And a lot of agents make that mistake. They say, okay, I need 1,000 leads or however many leads or how many people in my pipeline, and that to get X amount of deals. It's like, but then you need however many times per transaction replacing it to
Yep.
to keep that funnel going. So you need to constantly be adding more and more
Yep.
people. It's not one in and one out. It's one in or one out and 10 in.
Yep. And one thing I never see agents do, I'm a big believer in keeping things simple.
Yep.
The more complicated I make it for myself, the more
Yeah.
likely it is I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
And the simpler I keep it, the more likely it is I can do it, and the more
Yeah.
likely it is I can keep it simple, right? And one thing I've told a lot of agents is I always take my hot leads, the people that I think want to do something, I write them down, put them in a notebook.
Yep.
I don't leave them in my CRM because you know what? I'm a high to medium D. I'm a really high I, but I'm a really low S and C, which means that I'm motivated. I like talking to people, but I'm not organized worth a damn, right? My organization process is little piles sitting in the floor,
Yeah.
and only I know how to go through and find those, right? So one of my problems is I can set them up in a CRM, but dude, next thing I know, I'm not going to log into it for 2
Yeah.
or 3 days. I got alerts coming up, and I'm not following up on those alerts because all of a sudden there's, we go from 2 alerts to 100 alerts, and then it's like, holy shit. So, take those good leads, make it really simple, print them out, stick them in a 3-ring binder, write them down in a spiral notebook, whatever it is, right? And that way you've got them. And when you're going in there prospecting, the days that you don't feel like it, the days that, hey, maybe you drank a little too much last night. Maybe you got a cold. Maybe, the kids were up all night. You got a baby, puppy, whatever it is,
Yep.
whatever your excuse is you want to give yourself today. You don't have to go through this whole thing. You can follow up with people easily.
Yeah.
And you can follow up with people easily. And, I think that it's one of the most important things they can do is keep things extremely, extremely simple with their database, extremely simple with their follow up, and it's gonna help you make more money.
100%. So one of the things you use to keep things simple is RedX. So we're doing this. We're going to put this episode out actually early because of the Black or Cyber
Yes.
Monday sale. So why don't you tell people what that's about?
So RedX has a Cyber Monday sale, and so it's Friday, so it's going to be in 2 days. If you go to jasonmorrisredx.com, you can go ahead and sign up on the waiting list. But if you call them, you tell them, hey, Jason sent you, they're going to waive the $150 setup fee. But some of their packages, depending on what you get, they have a lot of different packages. They'll customize one with you. Of course, the longer you committing to a package for 6 months, 12 months, and going ahead and pay it for upfront, it's going to do a couple things for you. Number one, it's going to commit you to your business, right?
Yep.
It's going to commit you to your business the next 6 to 12 months, commit you to prospecting, but you're going to save a lot of money with them.
Yeah, which is great.
So, and that's the biggest thing. And they only do one sale a year. It's Cyber Monday. And guys, if you need me to remind you, send me a message through Facebook. I'll put you on my list or remind you about it because I don't want you to miss out on this thing. Because you can take Ryan's program. And if you take the program Ryan's talking about, then you start adding RedX. If you add RedX Geo Leads Plus, that is the subscription, right? They offer for sale owners, they offer expireds, they offer a lot of different stuff. But if you take that one subscription, if you get the regular version, it's $40 a month without a dollar, and you take and add that on top of your Facebook ads, your door knocking, your mailers, your open houses, all the stuff Ryan talks about. Dude, I think it's gonna double, triple, or maybe even more some of the results that you're getting.
Yeah, that's awesome. So the website again is what?
If you go to jasonmorrisredx.com.
Okay, so we'll put that in the notes so people can check that out. So that's awesome.
Great, man.
And so we always wrap up with your favorite book. So what's one book that you recommend? And you can be selfish if you want to plug your own.
I'd be selfish. I've wrote several books. But I'm not going to be selfish. I'm going to tell you guys one book that has literally changed the way I've done business was Chet Holmes' book, The Ultimate Sales Machine.
Yeah, that's a great book.
Right. That was one of the greatest books. The Dream 100 idea in it. He's got a lot of great ideas in it. But the Dream 100 idea changed the way I was prospecting and doing business. all of a sudden I learned I didn't need to call 1,000 people a day.
Yeah.
I just need to keep calling people, adding them to my list, and try to find that 100 people that want to do business with me in the next 30, 60, 90 days, right? And if you're doing it right and you're following up right, you'll never get to 100. But once you get that list of 30, 40 people, right, that want to do business with you in the next 30, 60, 90 days, dude, your business will change. That is the book. I told you I'd be selfish. I don't want to be selfish. And I recommend one of mine. My follow-up day planner is actually out for 2021, and it just came out. But that Ultimate Sales Machine is the book that changed my business and changed the way I was doing business.
Put that in the notes as well so people can check that out. So that's awesome. So if anyone wants to check out what you're up to, how can they get a hold of you? We can put the link to the Facebook group as well. I don't get the name right.
Facebook is really easy. Real estate agents that really work on Facebook, you can find me there. I'm always posting stuff. I give away a lot of free stuff, a lot of free training in there. There's a lot of great training videos in the group already. They're a little bit older, and we're always doing something. We've done some great podcasts. There's a great podcast with Ryan in there, and man, join it. There's definitely some stuff in there that help you grow your business that don't cost you anything.
It's awesome. It's a very active group, and there's a lot of great information in there. So I'm part of it, and it's fantastic to be part of it. So that's awesome. Really appreciate being on the show. And like I said, we're going to get this out early. It's going to come out almost a week early just because we want to get into the Cyber Monday sale. So thank you for being on the show. We really appreciate it. And looking forward to hearing what your business is like in 2021.
Hey, thanks, man. I really appreciate it, Ryan.
Thanks. Thanks for checking out today's episode. If you'd like more videos like this, be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out our Facebook page and our other social media channels. Looking forward to bringing you more great content like this, and happy farming.